Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today we're joined by a lovely Vedic astrologer, Chitra. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Talking about my favorite topic, right?
Yeah, so how have you been since the Vedic New Year?
Oh, it has been great. I think the Vedic New Year is full of so much energy, and then we are worshipping the goddess right now. It's my Vedic birthday also. It's always a very energy-filled time for me. I think March, April, and then sun gets exalted soon. So I really look forward to March and April and May. These 3 months are my favorite.
Yeah, so people who don't know much about the Vedic New Year, can you talk a little bit about what that energy brings collectively?
So I think traditionally Vedic New Year is about, so let's first get back to Vedic calendar. Okay. So Vedic calendar is called Panchang, and we don't just look at dates or days. In fact, days have actually been borrowed from Vedic system, but we look at 5 parts of time, Panchang, and it's a lunar and solar calendar, and every year it's basically following the moments, it's following the energies as they change, as we move into the orbit around the sun. I think New Year is the time when new crops begin. So this is really about spring. It's really about new energy. It's really about just starting the year fresh. And as we begin, I think the most important thing is we celebrate the goddess. So because we are celebrating creation here, and so we celebrate the goddess because we believe that goddess is the one who's given us birth. She's the one she's called the Prakriti. She is the nature. So 9 days, as soon as we step into the new year, we are celebrating the goddess. So it's a very high power time because there are millions of deities in Vedic system, but the important part about goddess is that she's called the Shakti. So Shakti is the power of every god, whatever power there lies and whatever power there lies on this material world. She's also called the Maya's illusion. So we are living in this life. It's an illusion, and she's the one who helps us either get trapped in this illusion or get freedom from this illusion. So as we start the new year, we celebrate her, and it's just a very energy-filled, powerful time. We begin it with fasting, cleansing our body, just eating clean, and there's all sorts of rituals at this time.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a very fertile time period where things are just being birthed and it's new energies. Right. And it's interesting too, because traditionally we think of the new year as January. And I feel like you actually don't really feel it shift until this time period.
Definitely, because I was telling you about Vedic birthday also. So you celebrate your birthday on a certain date. But when you talk about Vedic birthday, that day has the exact combination as the day you were born on. So the energy is the day. Your new year is that day. And similarly, all the other things also. What really matters is you are in the universe at that point. I think a very beautiful thing about Vedic system and astrology is that we don't give ourselves so much importance. We are just a part of this huge universe. And there's this saying called Yat Pindam Tat Brahmandam, means as this body, as the universe. So we believe that we are just, the universe is a huge body and there are patterns which are being replicated. So it's very important for us that we recognize where we are in the system and recognize that we are as an energy. Like if you start seeing everything with an energy, you lie as a particle in this huge scheme. And so I'm an engineer, a little bit of a background. Like I'm an engineer. I have a master's degree in science, and I work with big corporations. And as someone who has a very strong science background, you have to recognize energy. You have to recognize particles. Like everything today is based on energy. So yeah, just not recognizing our place in the universe is the biggest mistake any scientist can do.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, and it's interesting. I'd love for you to speak a little bit about how you got into Vedic astrology. Like, when did that journey unfold for you?
For me, I think I was born into it.
I had a feeling you were.
My parents were firm believers, and I come from a place, so astrology, I think like most sciences, I think not just in India, everywhere around the world, whatever subject you think of, whether it's art or science or whatever, were funded. And even today they are funded by government. In those times, they were funded by royal families. So I belong to this part of India, which is called Rajasthan. So it's called the place of royals. And so there are so many royal families there. There are these priests who have been funded, and there are these huge lineages of astrology.
Oh, wow.
So I belong to one of such families which have ties to the royal families. And so we really believe in astrology. We really believe in all of this energy work. And like our forts are highly consecrated by energies. And since childhood, I've been just hearing all of these things, and I've had readings. Like our name is kept based on astrology and everything. And I think, and then my mother developed an interest. Like we were just followers, but at some point my mother developed an interest and she started learning, and books, just finding books as started getting digitalized. The classics started getting digitalized. So she took my help to use the computer to read and translate the books. And so I learned a lot passively growing up as a teenager. But as we grew up, I think at some point I just felt that what the classics were saying and what the modern astrology is doing, really grateful for all the predictions that I received. There's some really strong predictions that I received. But in my life, I felt that there is a huge diversion or divergence that's being created right now. The classic astrologers are too much into ancient times still. Yes. And they're not able to relate to the modern times. And when you look at modern astrologers, it's quite corrupted, to speak plainly. The roots have been forgotten. The body says very clearly that you have to be respectful to the classics, the text. The founding fathers have not even attributed the knowledge to themselves. They believe and they say that it has been provided to them from Brahma, which is like the founder of the universe, the supreme being. Nobody calls themselves a master. The idea is that you are a medium. We as astrologers are mediums. And the idea is that astrology is to be used. It's a lifestyle. It's not a simple predictive tool. It's not a ritual tool. It's a lifestyle. So there's just I was living in Seattle at the time. I was working for Amazon. And between all of that, while I was there, so I just felt this doesn't make sense. So I started learning as just a part-time hobby, and I got so much into it. I started doing readings for people, and then they started telling me that you should do it professionally. And slowly, I think once you get into it, you can't think of anything else.
So it's so true. It's so true. It just consumes your whole thought process, and you're like, this connects to astrology in some way. And it's great. Definitely. I love what you said about the modern astrology as well, because I do feel like they forget some of the roots and also like the respect that comes in the culture.
If you read the scriptures, they clearly talk about so many instances. Because one very interesting thing is they have taught us like children. There are so many stories and classics and myths, and they're basically condensed with all this information. And they talk about the moment you disrespect the body that you're learning, or the guru that you have learned from, or you stop being the medium. Universe stops flowing the information through you. That is such an important thing. And that is forgotten, I think, in today's time. And also, I think there's this struggle between Western astrology and Vedic astrology. It's very sad that today, like Vedic astrology is not the term, but we have started to call it Vedic astrology just to create us, to make sure that people know that not Western astrology. And it's so confusing.
It's confusing. Yeah. And in terms of, so you do have this sort of like scientific mind as well too, which I love that you're doing the engineer stuff. And so when it comes to the astronomy, right, of sidereal astrology, it's more in alignment with where the stars are currently at. So could you speak a little bit about the difference in terms of the astronomy of sidereal versus tropical as well?
I think the main difference is the Ayanamsha, which means the corrections. It's not, there is a rhythm of how the planets are moving. Every few centuries or so, the planets, the stars also move. They just seem to move much slower. And in Vedic astrology, we have found corrections in the formula. So like if you are doing data science, you would call that an error margin or some variables. And we have introduced that into the formula. And because of that, Vedic astrology corresponds much more accurately to the actual positions of planets and stars and constellations in the universe. That is the main difference. And that's why I think For example, right now, everyone was raving about the Aries season, but actually it's not
No.
Aries season right now, but
Yeah.
it's frustrating, but then fine.
I know there's a certain point when I just feel like people can't let go of what they've known their whole life. And so a lot of people in the Western world, they want to hold on to what they've understood about astrology. And it's an ego death almost going into Vedic. And they're like, oh, I'm a whole different person based on my chart. And it's hard for them.
And I think one thing that West is really good at, and I have to appreciate them at, is they know how to commoditize the thing. So when you pack and think a certain way, when you put some labels onto it and you put it in a shelf, it's much easier to pick up, right?
Yep.
Rather than going into the forest and searching for a bird or something. So that's the difference that's what's happening with Vedic and this. Don't blame anyone, but I do think that we need to do a better job. As Vedic astrologers, we need to do a better job.
Yes. Yeah. And I think too, the thing with Vedic as well is it's a lot of training. And I think with Western astrology, people feel like, oh, they can get to an understanding of it easier and quicker. And with Vedic, you're like, it never ends, the amount of information.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think the best astrologers that I know, they've been practicing for 60 years. They're super accurate. They still call themselves students. I think it speaks to their humility. And it's also about the fact that this is unending. When you get into Vedic astrology, it's not just Vedic astrology. It's not just predictions. Every element, if you could go into periodic table, you can relate every element to a planet or planetary conjunction. If you get into spices, you can connect flowers, plants, everything. And if you're studying all of that, then there's sound system, for example. Like every sound that you make, mantras are basically combinations of sound. They're invoking energies. And each mantra can relate to different combinations of the chart. So it's unending. It's unending. That's true. But I think the point is that when you talk about like the main essence of Vedic astrology, we give so much respect to gurus and guides because the idea is that if you want to treat yourself, for example, if you are not well, you go in and you try to learn medicine. You go to a doctor. And you trust the doctor.
Exactly.
And if you start Googling all your symptoms, which these days people do, then you would not just be confused, but you would ruin your day or months or
your whole year.
That's what's happening with astrology, right? Everyone is trying to just Google their house placement or sign placement or conjunction. That's not the whole story. That's maybe 10% of it. And not able to see it in the whole scheme. And for getting publicity or for increasing their reach, astrologers are also giving that half-baked information. Which I tell my clients that if you are so interested in learning astrology properly, but I want you to use astrology and feel empowered, not as because you could sometimes see some combinations and you could be scared, and that's not healthy. That's not the point of astrology. It's to empower you.
Yeah, it's for empowerment. And it's also just about our soul purpose and like our karmic path. And so in the tradition, the tradition as well too, Western astrology can move towards this like personality-based psychological understanding, where the Vedic tradition is about our karma and our dharma and like who we're here to become, which I think connects a lot with the Rahu versus Ketu. And so could you speak a little bit about the mythology of that as well, and what exactly is Rahu Ketu?
I think first thing is just to know that Jyotish, the meaning of Jyotish, that's also misinterpreted, by the way. Most of the places you would find the meaning as the Lord of Light, whereas the actual meaning is Jyoti plus Sha. Sha means knowledge. So knowledge.
I thought it was the science of light. Okay.
So the root Sha. Sha means to know, be aware of, and Jyoti means light. And so here when we talk about Jyoti, we're talking about the supreme being, the soul, having the knowledge of our soul, having the knowledge of the supreme being and our place in this scheme of things. And so by that definition, you understand that Jyotish is about knowing our 4 pillars. So 4 pillars of Jyotish are Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. To know that what has our soul come for. Soul has come to spread principles, awareness, Dharma, or has it come for just following its desires and in form of karma, or it has come from moksha, or it has like for liberation, or it has come from artha, that is just to accumulate resources and make money.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own purpose, and that's the sole purpose. So you cannot put everyone in a box. That's one very important. Everybody is so unique. And when you read the scriptures, they say that to find liberation, there are multiple paths. Some could be following God, or some could be just simply following or worshipping their work. And each of the paths leads to liberation. It depends on where or how your soul has come here for. And so, Rahu Ketu are, if we go to the story, when you talk about the name, I find, that the names or every term in Sanskrit and Vedic astrology are full of information. So Swarna Bhanu, the word means the golden sun. There's golden and Bhanu is this. So Swarna Bhanu was believed to be, like there's this distinction between gods and demons, or rather negative beings. And Swarna Bhanu was born from parents, like mother was born from the gods and father was the king of the demons. So he is a very accurate prediction or picture of we are a mix of both the energies. We're not completely divine. We're not completely negative. And he's a prince who wants to achieve it, wants to achieve the status of the gods, who wants to be in that position. And he is a warrior. He is the leader and commander of the armies of his father. He is the biggest strategist. He looks great, and like it's described that his eyes look amazing. What do you call it? Hypnotizing.
Yeah.
And so this guy, he has so many strategies. As he leads this command to this army, he doesn't think of what's right or wrong. He just thinks that he could win. Okay. And amongst all that, there are so many stories, but there's also the positive side of him, that he was the worshipper of Goddess Saraswati. He was the biggest worshipper or student of Goddess Saraswati. So he has all sorts of knowledge, all sorts of traits. And there are bad sides. The greed, the wild energy, the using immoral ways to win the battles and all of that. So ultimately, in all of that, he gets to a point where gods are getting the nectar of immortalism, and he goes and he disguises himself. So that's also one of his things. He can disguise himself.
Yeah.
And creates an illusion. He sits between the sun and moon when there's the line of getting the Amrit, which is the nectar. And he gets identified by sun and moon, but just as he is drinking Amrit. And so that is why it's believed that Rahu cuts his head, but because he has already taken the sip, he's immortal now and he's gotten that place, but now his body and his head are separated, and he now hates sun and moon. So he causes eclipses. So our North Node and South Node are basically the shadows of moon, and they create eclipses. So this is the mythology, and the greater idea is there is this, I think there is more of this human side, that humans have both these sides. When we talk about Rahu, the North Node, it is said to be the planet that keeps us stuck in the cycle of birth and rebirth. Because it gives you all the desires, it gives you all the wants, constant hunger.
Yeah.
So the head is said to be Rahu, and you feed a head, but there's no body to get that or to stay fulfilled. So it's constant desire. And Ketu, on the other hand, doesn't have a head, just wants peace. So follows gurus, follows whatever comes with it. And what it's looking for is peace. And what it's looking for is to cut you off. It's the body of a commander, mind you. So it holds the sword and it cuts you off. And the reason why it cuts you off is because it wants to rest. It wants to get you liberation from the cycle of birth and rebirth.
Yep.
And unless you get on that path, you constantly feel a void. Wherever your Ketu sits in your chart, those areas, you constantly feel this void. Whenever the dasha will run, you will feel detached with things around you. Mostly, I've seen people who are running Ketu dashas, Ketu periods, they get into spirituality.
Yeah.
They start chanting.
Yeah.
Because they are searching for something which is higher. They are searching for that peace. And Rahu, on the other hand, brings greed, brings passions, brings hunger. And these people it depends. So again, because this is energies can go both ways. And as I said, this is just one part of the picture.
Yeah.
If your Rahu is well placed, you could be following something very strong, could be very courageous. You could be working for women empowerment. It's a wild energy. So you could be working as this comedian or a strategist who comes off with amazing innovations or amazing scientific innovations. And you could be doing something to further the goodness in this world.
Yeah.
And if it's negatively placed, you could be just chasing materials. You could be chasing money. You could be chasing fame. And Rahu also relates with photographs because it creates illusion. You could be just obsessed with how you look, how your image is, and all of that.
Yeah.
So, in essence, these are two different poles, and there are very few people who have both of these balance. Maybe 1%. That might be a higher number than it is, but and as we are doing, for example, as we are doing worshipping the goddess right now. So, Rahu and Ketu, because Rahu is so attached, we were talking about Swarnabhanu, he's so attached with goddess Saraswati, who is the holder of all the knowledge, and his mother. And so he is actually only controlled by Shakti, only controlled by goddess. Only goddess can help you come over that illusion or use that illusion in your benefit. Rahu connects with lions, for example, and tigers, the whole cat family, the leonine family. And Durga is the one who rides them. So again, as we speak, I think this is such a great time to talk about Rahu and Ketu.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and it's also interesting because I find Rahu to overpower everything and Ketu to separate, right? So Rahu, wherever it's going in the chart or in a dasha period, it's going to overshadow whatever's going on near it. And then Ketu is going to take you away from whatever that energy is. And that's like my understanding of Rahu Ketu in essence.
Yes. Definitely. So if you talk about Rahu Ketu in houses, and so what I've learned is wherever Rahu sits, so let's say it sits in your ascendant, and you go and you look at the charts of a lot of celebrities or whatever. See, that's why I say that this is how, because it has to be connected to the ascendant. It doesn't have to sit in it. It could be with your ascendant lord. It could be aspecting your ascendant lord. But if it's connected to your ascendant, your personality is greater than anything.
Huge.
You're there, like you want attention.
Yeah.
How you dress, like Lady Gaga. How you dress is just because you cannot bear to be normal. You cannot bear to be lost in the crowd. And that's the case with every Rahu energy, whatever it relates with. If it's in your 4th house, then your house, your car. If it's in your 7th house, your spouse is going to be greater than the reality. If it's in your 9th house, then your guru or your idea of your guru or your spirituality. If it's in 10th house, then what you do. That's why it makes scientists and IT engineers and all of that, whenever 10th house comes in picture, because what are they doing? They are talking about ideas which no one can think of. All the technology is something that no one could imagine. They would think that this is madness. It's Rahu thinks of those things. It wants to think about. And on the other hand, Ketu minimizes it. It doesn't want to be seen. It's a monk who wants to go into a cave and doesn't want to be seen. It's small insects. It's the co-ruler of Scorpios. It's small beings who want to just hide away in the dark because they don't want to be seen. They just want to be alone. They want to be isolated to explore their soul and spirituality. And they don't. So if you see a Ketu dominant person, they're going to be introvert. They're going to not want to be in the civilization, and they will hold a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
But they're not holding the knowledge to show off. Whereas Rahu wants to show off, whether it has anything or not. Rahu role people often have half information, but they will show it as multiple times. Whenever Rahu comes, if growth happens, it happens exponentially. If fall happens, it happens exponentially. Nothing happens on small scales with Rahu.
Yeah. Rahu heightens everything. It's like a heightened energy.
Right.
And I think in the dashas too, like Rahu dashas, a lot of people feel like if it's well placed, they get kind of everything they think that they want. Money, success, all those things, but they always feel like the spiritual is missing a little bit from their life.
Yes. And even if they are, what I have noticed is that even if they are following spirituality, it's with ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Right. Because Rahu is material. See, Rahu doesn't want you to get out of. A lot of people who practice Tantra, they will have a strong Rahu because Tantra is basically a way of getting what you want to get.
I love that. Very fine.
When you are practicing, when we talk about astrology or more sattvic practices, more sort of practices, like if you think about monks, they chose to live a life of hardship, or they choose, if they cannot bear it, they will choose as much as they can, because we want to get rid of our karma. We want to pay off our debts. We want to not run away from the hardships. We just want to make sure that we are able to fulfill our other responsibilities. Like if I'm a grihastha, meaning I have a family and a householder, I just want to make sure that I can provide for my family and everything. If my chart shows that I have to pay somewhere, I will pay, as long as I can also just live my life. And that's fine for me. Because for me, the main goal is not to get what I want to get, because I know that my goal is to get out of this cycle.
Yeah.
What's the point of collecting millions of dollars unless I have some other motive, unless I want to provide to society, or unless I want to help this community get up, or unless I want to do something with it. I have a goal. Personally, for my soul, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Whereas Rahu, or when you're doing some very strong energetic practices, which are to get things, then you are not clearing your karma. In fact, it's a simple bank transaction. You are taking a huge loan from the universe, and you have to think how you will pay it back, right? Yeah, I think Rahu-led people can also follow spirituality, but it's very much, if you will look at nakshatras, look at Rahu nakshatras. These will, everyone is about what you want to get, or there's a little bit of trickery there, there's a little bit of illusion there. And Ketu led nakshatras are very free. They don't attach to anything. And sometimes it's negative also. But the main point is because you don't belong here.
Yeah. And I think what astrology helps us do is get out of those karmic cycles and figure out how we can basically not come back here and not reincarnate. So I'd love for you to go through the houses of Rahu versus Ketu for the audience. I know that everyone's super interested, and I'd love that for the audience.
All right. So before we start, I just want to make sure that people understand, as we talk about Rahu Ketu or any planets and houses, not the complete picture. It will really depend on which sign it is in, which nakshatra it is in. And then especially all the planets depend on the energy of their dispositors, but Rahu and Ketu follow their dispositors. So if their dispositors are strongly placed, they will perform better. If their dispositors are not strongly placed, then it will be a problem. So that being said, I think we've already discussed, for example, ascendant versus seventh house. Larger than life personality. And if it is positively placed, these people can be hugely successful in professions such as of science, politics, of even corporate, fashion, where you require a lot of creativity, strategy, where you're not afraid to stand out, and you want to live a life which is just large, and you want to get attention everywhere. And there could be attention seekers, yes. If it is in water signs, Rahu in water signs is tricky because Rahu is a volatile energy. When you're scientifically speaking, I like to relate everything with elements, and also when you talk about Rahu, it's nuclear energy. So the placement really matters. So that is Rahu in ascendant. I always say that you have to be wary of people who have Rahu in ascendant, because they are strong personalities. And you have to see where this Rahu is taking. Like, they could be the next leader, the next prime minister, or they could be somebody who is just a complete, depending on how the energy is. So you have to be mindful of that. On the other hand, seventh house Ketu detachment from partnerships, detachments from social situations. Very difficult to find peace in relationships. Now, one very interesting thing about Ketu is person keeps backups wherever Ketu is. Because you're never satisfied. You never feel completely attached to one thing, and you feel that maybe I'm not feeling attached, and so this might end anytime. So they keep backup. So again, that becomes a Ketu in seventh house, because seventh house is the relationship area. It's the intimacy area. Fifth house is also about love and relationships. These are tricky areas because they have a lot of breaks. They could have breaks in their marriage. They could have breaks in their partnerships. And somewhere in their heart, even if they are not really in a relationship with someone else, but in their mind, they are always ready to leave
Yeah.
because they're never completely attached. The only relationships they can sustain are spiritual ones. Because when Ketu is there, it's asking you to get spiritually fulfilled using that house.
Yeah.
So if you are with a partner who's also spiritually inclined, you would stay connected. But if it's completely based on physical intimacy or worldly things, it doesn't last.
Yep.
So that's there. This is one of the two sides of the coin placements. So it's one thing is malefics always help material things.
Yeah.
And they will harm human relationships, human things, life. So when it comes to second house, people with second house Rahu, it's hunger.
Yeah.
You would literally see people having second house Rahu have a voracious appetite, or they will eat a lot of like meat and alcohol, or they'll smoke and all of these things.
Yeah.
Rahu is intoxicating things. And because of that hunger, second house is also your resources. They amass wealth.
Yeah.
Because they are hungry for it, they go for it. So it's positive in that manner. If somebody wants to get rich, if they want to amass wealth, because Rahu, if it's positively based, because it's a follower of goddess Saraswati, they could really have a speech which is full of wisdom. They could really speak multiple languages. They could have people or in their family who are international. They could have an international family. So there are all those positive things. The negative part can be because Rahu is a wild energy. Second house is your speech. Now Rahu either goes on a very high sophisticated thing. So you could be someone who speaks French and Latin and Spanish, or you could be someone who is using really bad language.
Yeah.
And you are violent, you're very aggressive because Mars is aggressive, yes, but Rahu is nuclear energy. Mars is fire. Fire doesn't burn that bad. Rahu in second house can also create problems in family because of speech.
Yep.
And the best remedy of any second house thing is prasad. So whatever you eat, it has to be sattvic. It has to be first offered to the gods, to the universe. You have to show thanks and then you eat it because that energy of food is playing in your second house. If Rahu is in second house, there is no doubt that person will have some sort of, they would either eat meat or they'll drink or they'll smoke. They will be addicted to something.
Yeah.
If they're not addicted to something, they will be taking medicines because medicines are drugs.
Yeah.
They will take something for sure. But to improve that energy, you could always offer whatever you eat, even if it's alcohol. There are deities, there are energies, as I said, Durga and Lord, two energies, two deities. And when we're talking about deities, I think one very important thing to know is that we are not asking you to worship or become Hindu. When you think of a deity, it's an energy. It's a form. You read about how they look. They are fierce. What they do, they fight. They are warriors. So the energy describes the energy that you should be meditating upon, focusing on, and be yourself. So deities are basically just different descriptions of different energy. Then comes 8th house Ketu. Now 8th house is the house of all the secrets.
Yep.
It's the house of ancestors. Anyone who has ancestral souls who have not completely transcended to the next levels, they will have planets in 8th house.
Interesting.
And these are, whatever energy is there, that is still missing or that needs to be explored in your lineage. So if somebody has Jupiter, then some wisdom, some religious things have to be explored. And if you have moon, it's related to food and depending on whatever is there. So Ketu there really shows that there are souls which have not, because Ketu talks about moksha and they are looking for liberation. So person having 8th house, they are very much connected to their ancestors. They can have visions. They have huge intuition. 8th house has all the secrets of universe. 8th house also talks about your lower body, intimate areas. So Ketu there, or if we go to Rahu there, they will talk of some specific health issues also. So these are like 8th house has to be treated carefully. Then comes 3rd house and 9th house. Now, this is the best placement of Rahu and Ketu.
Yep.
Because 3rd house is your arms. 3rd house is how you communicate. 3rd house is how you fight. 3rd house is your efforts. And Rahu being the wild energy that it is, it's like holding huge weapon in your arms, like holding a huge body of knowledge. It's like holding the biggest supercomputer in it's also subconscious mind. So your mind works brilliantly if you have third house Rahu.
Yep.
So third house Rahu is one of the best placements. And again, of course, this will go in both ways. So if it is going well, then all of these things. If it's not going well, then these people can be rash drivers. They can fight very quickly. They'll be very quickly triggered. So third house is that. Third house also talks about your siblings. So it tells something about how your siblings are going to be. As I said, Rahu and Ketu harm the life signification. So when Rahu is anywhere, let's say you are a girl child, and so third house is your younger sibling. Next child is not going to be a girl. Because a girl cannot survive. If a girl is born, she will not survive. That's the classic dictum. You let me know if that works. But in my experience, that ninth house, Ketu. Now Ketu, as I said, Ketu is related to dogs. Rahu is related to cats. Like a dog follows its master. Ketu follows whatever planet it's with, whatever energy it's with. So when we talk about ninth house as a spiritual energy, ninth house is that of the luck, destiny, guru, principles. So ninth house Ketu means that person has a soul connection with spirituality.
Yep.
They have a soul connection with spirituality, and at the same time, they constantly feel like there's a discontent regarding spirituality. They want more. They keep learning more. And if they find a guru, so people who have Jupiter aspecting or Jupiter sitting with Ketu in ninth house, it's called Matsya Yoga. Matsya Yoga, there's a whole story about how a fish was born in the Lord Vishnu to form of a fish, in a small fish, and then he kept growing and became a blue whale. It talks about basically the large body of knowledge that is there in the universe. And it keeps growing. You could keep putting it in a vessel, it will keep growing. So that's ninth house Ketu is a beautiful placement to have. And the only thing is they should trust their gurus, because if they start keeping backups here too and they don't trust their gurus, I think it's for both Rahu or Ketu in the ninth house. If you don't trust or if you have greed around your gurus, then it's like creating a barrier. A very interesting thing about one of the belief system is that if the first knowledge that was passed, it was not passed by words. It was not passed by lessons. Lord Shiv himself sat and he just looked at his disciples. So just being in the mind of your guru, just being in the sight of your guru brings light. It's because all of us are connected to the universe. It just needs to be triggered. And so our gurus, our guides are triggers. They're not teaching us anything new. And we have to respect them for that. They're lighting that fire.
Yeah.
Then comes fourth house and 10th house Ketu. Now this is again fourth house Rahu. Now fourth house is the place of contentment and satisfaction. It's your home where you go to relax, where you go to find peace.
By the way, this is my placement.
Rahu being in fourth house, there's a lack of peace. There's a lack of satisfaction. It's difficult because you're constantly looking for something. There is a lot of motherhood imprints. I wouldn't say trauma necessarily, because depending on how your placements are, your mother could be either a mad genius or she could be downright crazy. And that is the root of why we grow up as people who are not able to find satisfaction. Because either way, if your mother is a mad genius, you're constantly trying to reinvent and you want something new. And if she's crazy, then you'd never feel safe in wherever you are. And there's this host, like when you own a home, people having fourth house Rahu are going to have crazy architecture. They will have stairs and there will be like ups and downs. The floor is not going to be straight because it has to be creative. It has to be grand. It cannot be simple. You own a car. It's something different. The color is different. So that fourth house energy is like that. I think the best way is place or give a sacred place to Goddess Durga in your home, because she helps you just empower yourself and use this Rahu energy as your weapon. 10th house Ketu. This is for spiritual work. Now, 10th house is our karma. Our karma is not just the career we choose. Everything we do, it's our public responsibility. 10th house is also your father's money, your father's speech. So how they talk. They could either be someone who talks very vaguely, because somewhere they're spiritual, they're lost, and what they talk about, you don't understand that. Very, or they don't talk a lot at all, or they're not there, or they don't have money because Ketu is the monk. They do have money, they keep it like a separate position, they keep backups of money and all of that. Two talks about geometry, angle, energies. So people could be working in that. But for yourself, what that matters is you are either into an intuitive work, you have to be, or you constantly confused.
Yeah. So
people with 10,000 K2, yeah.
Yeah. So I do have K2 in the 10th house. And my whole life, like anytime I try to do a normal job, something would just come in and just mess up and I'd be forced into basically doing something spiritual connected to work. Or I'd always just be like, there's nothing else I can do except this work, essentially.
Exactly. As I said, Ketu wants you to go towards spirituality. It will cut you off. If you're doing anything else, it will cut you off.
Yep.
So that's natural, that's normal. Another thing about Ketu is you cannot chase.
Yeah.
So people having 10,000 Ketu, my advice would be not chase a career.
Yep.
Do not chase a profession. Do not even make goals.
No.
Do what fulfills your soul.
Yeah.
The moment you stop chasing Ketu sits, whatever it represents, it will come to you directly.
Yep.
The more you cling to anything, because Ketu is your soul has to get freedom, and you're clinging to something, and going to cut you off.
Yep.
So that's the most important thing. Then, depending on other placements, Ketu in 10th house can be cyclics. They have a connection. Ketu always have a soul connection to the universe.
Yeah.
5th and 11th house. Now, 5th and 11th house is very interesting. 5th house is how you deal with public. 5th house is the accumulated good karma from past life. Rahu is here. Now, Rahu is a cheat. Rahu is an illusion creator. In 5th house is what have you accumulated? People will create illusions for public.
Yeah.
Okay. So they could be people like filmmakers, they could be great photographers, or they could be people who are obsessed with power. 5th house is power too. 5th house is position, authority. This is the place of sun. So they could be so obsessed. They could be like politicians who will tell lies or who will not even be afraid of forging things. And so it can go both ways.
Yeah.
To be mindful of that.
There could be like an element of deception in terms of what they're showing to the world.
Yes, because 5th house is show off and Rahu wants to show off. So they constantly want to do that. And in relationships, the 5th house is your interest, love interest. 7th house is more deeper relationship. In love interests also, you could see that they have some grand ideas of who they want to be with. And they cannot be completely reliable. Rahu and Ketu are also, one of the symbolisms is a snake.
Yeah.
So, like snake sheds their skin, Ketu, wherever they sit, it's like that. So, one has to be careful. People with 5th house Rahu. Now, see, if it relates to the ascendant, it's themselves who are cheating. It doesn't relate to the ascendant, they could be cheated by other people. Yep. So we have to, I think that's also one of the things we have to see, that there could be positive or negative things. This is a huge lack in astrology. A lot of astrologers I see, they will see it as a malefic thing combination in the chart and they would blame it on you. Whereas you are somebody who is a survivor. You have gone through all of that. Yeah. So it's very necessary to identify who is bringing this energy. Are you yourself doing this to others or someone else is doing this to you?
I've seen people with Rahu in the 5th house actually get cheated on multiple times. Kind of interesting. Cheating is something I've seen with Rahu in the 5th house, actually.
Yeah. And there's this, anything in astrology, I'll say that something bad happens to you, there's somewhere we have done something to deserve.
Yeah, totally.
5th house Rahu, why they are treated is because they have an idea of this crazy partner. They are looking for someone who is, I don't know, making a lot of money, who is grand, and who has mobster kind of, who's unreal. And when you're chasing something like that, you're going to find something that's not real.
Yeah, true.
So, like, that's where the counseling comes in. That's why I think, like in India, parents, first thing they do is they will look at their charts and they will guide and parent based on the chart, because
I love that.
At a young age, you need to know, like, you could be cheated. So you have to be careful in relationships. And at a young age, you need to know what you could study, your brain works where and all of that. So 5th house is also your education. So people who in 5th house Rahu can be great in science. I've known some people who are great inventors, scientists, aerospace engineers, because fifth house.
They're very very intellectual. They can be very in the intellect.
Yes. Then, and I mean, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg with every description here, but then we come to the sixth house. It's again a great placement of Rahu and Ketu. Like after third and ninth, I think, or not after, I would say this is better than that. Sixth house is the place of disputes, arguments, disease, sickness. It's also the house of service. It's also the house where you are, your daily routine, like your ability to sort through problems. So sixth house, whenever it has any malefic planet, it gives you the strength to fight through all of these negative things. Sixth house is your visible enemies. So if you have soft planets there, you cannot defeat them. You're not somebody to fight. But if you have planets like Rahu, Mars, Sun, even Saturn, you can fight back. You have the patience, you have the energy, you have the wide mindset to do whatever it takes to win a fight. Sixth house Rahu is great. Sixth house Rahu people beat their competition. They are formidable. We learn astrology through the charts. So when you talk about Lord Ram, he had sixth house Rahu. And his enemy was Ravan, who had 10 heads and who ruled a kingdom, a golden kingdom, and he was the most powerful. He was blessed to never be defeated unless it was a specific weapon. So if you have sixth house Rahu, yes, you're formidable, but your enemies are also formidable. You fight huge things and you win over things if you use that correctly. I think the problem, if the placements are not right, sixth house Rahu can be scared. I've seen so many charts with sixth house Rahu. They are scared of like animals. They cannot even pet a cat. And so my advice always to sixth house Rahu people is you go in the wild, you go on safaris, you start dealing with animals a little bit because you have to be courageous. It's the place of a fight. It's the place where you compete. So you have to be courageous. And also you have to serve because sixth house is also about service. So you have to serve the society. You have to fight for those who are not as powerful as you.
Yep.
So that's very important. Then comes, and then sixth house, as I said, sixth house is also, the sixth house is animals. You can pet, tamed animals. 12th house are wild animals. When Rahu is there in 6th house, you are supposed to tame your demons. You are supposed to tame wildest creatures. So you have to be courageous. 12th house Ketu. 12th house Ketu is of freedom. These are people who are on the path of finding that liberation. They are very close to it. They are complete. 12th house is that of isolation. They are not afraid of isolation. 12th house is that of Guru's ashram. Their soul is connected with their guides, their gurus, the universe. Their soul is on the path. Now, 12th house also talks about your feet. So when Ketu is there, you walk with open feet. That's connected to the universe. So 12th house Ketu is a positive one. You don't cling to anyone. 12th house is your expenses versus your donation. So what happens is people who donate, they do not have unwanted expenses. People who do not donate, they will have unwanted expenses because the same house shows both of that. So you could be like getting sick, going to the hospital, or something comes up and you lose all your money because your 12th house is not balanced. And because the universe wants you to give back. You're not giving it beautifully, so it takes from you. And Ketu is there. You're very open-handed. You're not attached to anything. You give like a monk, right? Or a dog, like they have a little bit of food. They have only gotten it by someone's charity and they will share that too. And they're not scared because they know that the universe provides for them. Yeah. So that's what 12th house. It's a beautiful combination to have.
They're so spiritual by nature. But with that K2 too, I've noticed sometimes they feel like they can never get enough spiritual knowledge. They want to just keep going into the spiritual.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, wherever Ketu sits, you have to, yes, you are spiritual and you follow, but at the same time, endlessness or infinity is an energy that you need to understand that you cannot trace the end of infinity. So that's very important for people who are Ketu led because you do it, Like you live every life, you take every breath because it's your dharma. You do it. This life has been given to you. You cannot count it or you cannot cling to it or something that should happen naturally, effortlessly. It's the same thing with Ketu. Everything. Your wisdom should flow effortlessly. Your life you're connected.
Yeah.
So you cannot be greedy about it. You cannot chase. As you move, you connect with every energy and you learn and you give it back. It's just a part. Like if there's a river, you're one drop in the river. Your job is just to flow with the river. The job is not to know every drop of the river. Right? Then seventh house Rahu and ascendant again, very spiritual. They could be either very spiritual or very lost.
Yeah.
Because when Ketu is there, one thing is Ketu causes breaks, discontinue. So you don't have a consistency in your head. Ketu keeps breaking you off with things. It's a very introverted, like you are yourself, you want to be with yourself. You're either very spiritual, you're either very intuitive, or you're just people who keep forgetting things. Yeah, they lock the door or not. So that's Ketu energy playing in the ascendant. It will give you marks. Ketu gives you cuts wherever you go. So when it's on the ascendant, it gives you cuts on your face or your head, especially the upper forehead or head. Personality wise also, they are not so sure of it. Because Ketu cannot really attach to something. So they don't have a self identity because Ketu is abstract. So like they are whatever that comes, or they are energy. And I think Ketu energy in ascendant especially is hermit and tarot. On the other hand, seventh house Rahu. So this becomes another reason of they could be chasing, because whenever there's 1-7 axis, the seventh house compensates for first. So the seventh house is the Shakti and the first house is the Shiva. So when person is unsatisfied or they feel disconnected, they look at seventh house. They try to find a partner, try to find somebody who fulfills them. So this becomes a desire, a chase, a passion. And then again, constantly they keep meeting people who are too much for them. Yeah. The easiest way to pacify this energy is to be with somebody who is from a different community, who is from a strange land, who is from another country, speaks another language. Someday they are going to be strange. If you're going to remain where they are, the strangeness is going to come anyhow. Yeah. Seventh house also talks of your business. So here again, Rahu being here, it talks about the kind of business you work in and the kind of business partners you get. Then comes the eighth house. Now, eighth house Rahu, second house Ketu. Eighth house Rahu has a very strong Tantra connection, as I said. Because eighth house is the deep, dark secrets of the universe, and Rahu is desire. So we try to extract from those dark dungeons. So that becomes a very strong. Now, depends. Some people, it's a combination as such. Some people can be impacted by it. They will have other people are performing some Tantra on them. And then the eighth house is also, we talk about, like when you're talking about eighth house is your pelvic region, and eighth house is your reproductive organs. Eighth house, the secret treasures, the hidden pen, whatever is your secret, whatever you're keeping inside, bottled up. So Rahu in here, a lot of energy is being collected here. That's why I say that when people are performing Tantra and they're chasing desires too much, what's happening is they are collecting all that karma. Yeah. So that eighth house Rahu, that also shows, again, Rahu is a wild energy, Rahu is a hungry energy, Rahu is unsatisfied. And Rahu wants attention, and eighth house is the place of your souls, your ancestral souls. So there are those souls who want your attention desperately. And if it's not well placed, these souls can bring a lot of eighth houses out of transformations. The transformations are huge. They are many folds higher or many folds down. They'll take you like that. If your ancestors are happy, they will just exponentially give you growth, money. People will think you are a mobster because how did you make so much money so quickly? Because Rahu energy is like that. People will see you like that. If it's badly placed, you will lose everything overnight because your ancestors are unhappy. So it's very strongly related to energetic work, ancestral work. You have to make sure ancestors are happy. Yeah. Second house Ketu, it's your resources, it's your family. You feel detached there. Again, see, who is not connected to their resources? Who is not connected to their family? Everyone is. I think it's very difficult for people to actually be disconnected or detached, like just have that boundary.
Yep.
So Ketu is there. And so people who have second house Ketu, they will have issues in their family. They will have problems in their resources because they cling too much. If they don't cling, if they just believe that the whole world is my family and I'll eat what universe provides me, then everything will be fine. Introverts, they speak less. They don't want to talk too much. When they do talk, some other energies are flowing through their speech, what they're saying. It's yes. Then ninth house Rahu and Ketu. Now this is interesting. Ninth house or Jupiter, anyway, with Rahu, called Rahu creates illusions. Ninth house Rahu people have to be mindful of what they preach, what they learn, who they are chasing. Often they are chasing. See, again, I say there's a reason. Just like fifth house, ninth house, often people feel like they have been cheated by their gurus. But the reason is because they have gone for a guru who is giving a pomp and show. A true mystic is not going to do pomp and show. So there has to be that balance, carefulness. They could be Devi worshippers, they could be goddess worshippers because Rahu is that. They could be people who are strictly, their religion is science. Because Rahu gives you all of that. They are scientists. Even if they follow God, there's a scientific explanation to that. Their spirituality can rise when they go to foreign countries, national waters. Ninth house Rahu is truly a mix of things again. Not the best placement to have. Another thing is, because ninth house is your dharma, it's your religion. Ninth house Rahu people will, if classics, they cheat their religion, but the idea is that your circumstances are such that you end up changing your religion or following another religion more. Because you are not satisfied with your own and you find answers somewhere else. It's not negative. I've seen people doing so and it actually works for them. If it's Ketu, you're more strongly rooted in your religion. Just the energies, because 9,000 the wisdom and principles and love. So where you find the guidance from, I think everybody has the same guidance, just matters like how you see it. Third house Ketu, again, introverts. They travel to find peace. Their communication has a lot of breaks because Ketu is that difficult relationship with siblings. It can be either that they are too close or they are not close at all, siblings. When it comes to, again, see, third house is your skills also. So Rahu and Ketu both will give some very peculiar skill set.
Yep.
So I know somebody in Washington who does amazing healing work and he reprograms subconscious mind.
Wow.
And he has 20 years of practice and it's amazing. And he has third house Rahu. But with Ketu, you are a healer. Your hands have that healing power. Ketu is also a fighter. Ketu also shows a sword. Rahu was there. But Rahu is more strategic. Rahu is easily triggered. Ketu, on the other hand, Ketu follows. So whatever conjunctions are there, whatever the dispositor is, relating to those things, we fight mindlessly. If Ketu is there in this sixth house or these things. Then comes 10th house. It's still okay. 10th house Rahu is fine. 10th house Rahu gives you like strategy, innovation, and all of those creative things. 4th house Ketu is the tricky part. Again, there's this lack of peace, right? And so that separation, maybe mother has not been there. If she's been there, she's not been there in spirit. And so that creates a difficult placement. And one thing about both Rahu and Ketu in 4th house is you must change your place. You must change your place. You must change your city because those energies, because it's your homeland, motherland, you have to go away from that. So that's very important. 11th house, Rahu and 5th house, Ketu. Again, 11th house, materialistic house of desires, house of everything you want, income, your networks. So Rahu supports all of that. Rahu helps you make a lot of money, great contacts, great networks, everything. 5th house Ketu, on the other hand, again, spiritual education.
Yeah.
It will break off your relationships. It will break off 5th house Ketu will have a lot of breaks in education. So again, it's mostly related to spiritual education. It's very important for 5th house Ketu people.
Yeah.
12th house Rahu and 6th house Ketu are a good placement. 12th house is where you sleep. 12th house is your dreams. 12th house is isolation. And if Rahu is there, you get bad dreams. You have a lot of, your expenses are crazy. You're spending on things which are just like big brands for show, for pomp and all of that. It's a very materialistic, like just the opposite of Ketu being in 12th. you are following liberation, Rahu is well when you're doing something wrong. The only time this can be good is if you are obsessed with helping the world you're working with, but still it's not a sign of finding peace. You cannot find peace if you have 12th house Rahu. You really have to, unless you go and live in the jungles.
Yeah.
Just 12th house is isolation. Rahu is wild. So you go live in the jungles and that's how maybe you find peace. But you have to deal with those wild animals.
Yeah. I feel like Rahu.
6th house Ketu. Sorry. Yeah, you go on.
No, I was going to say Rahu in the water, the Moshka energy, it's very erratic, right? It's just a very up and down. It's hard to find peace. Yeah.
Yes. One of my gurus, over the years, I've learned from many gurus, and one of my gurus said that whenever you see Rahu in Cancer in any chart, do not even take that reading, run. Because
it's funny.
As I said, Rahu is currently, if you do chemistry experiments, like some bomb which will erupt at any time, it's that. Mm-hmm. And then it's in the water sign, Cancer, it's your emotions, it's your mind. So people with Rahu in Cancer, they really have to work on their emotional stability.
Yep.
That's a huge task for them. Then comes 6th house Ketu. 6th house Ketu, spiritual service.
Yeah.
Simple, spiritual service, dogs become a huge part of your journey on spirituality. 6th house creates breaks, and 6th house is routine, and Ketu creates breaks and detachment. So routine becomes something you have to have a spiritual routine, otherwise it's just going to be messy.
Yeah.
You might not get out of the bed if you're not doing the spiritual service, if you're not following the spiritual path, because you're just not connected in that energy. Gives you a bunch of diseases also. I think the 6th house is the house with diseases. So depending on which planet is there will be different kinds of diseases. If that planet is controlled, you won't have it. If that planet is not controlled, you will have it. So that's just given with any planet in 6th house. So yeah, that's Rahu and Ketu in very short. But I think today's world, it's very important to have both of them balanced.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was going to ask that. How do you bring that? Because it's basically like a karmic dance between the two energies,
right,
houses. And so how can people find that equilibrium or balance between the Rahu Ketu, which is the whole life mission, essentially?
I think one thing definitely is mindset. At the end of the day, entire astrology comes at that point that you have to be detached. There's this talk in the Bhagavad Gita. It says that you have the right to do your work, your karma, but you do not have the right to cling to the results. So you should not be doing anything, whether it's spiritual work or whether it's professional work, thinking of, will only do this if I get this result. Yeah. It's your duty. It's your passion. If you're called to it, it's your karma. You work on those things. So whether then it is Rahu or Ketu, it balances both of them, because now what you're doing it has a higher purpose. It's not materialistic. It's not greedy. It's not clingy. That becomes a huge part. If you've heard about Kars network, is when all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu.
Yeah, it's a lot of intensity.
Yes, very intense. Every 9 years or so, the person will have huge changes in their life, out of control. It's a huge storm. And the reason this is happening is because Rahu and Ketu are now controlling their life, and they want to tell them that you cannot cling to anything, you cannot depend with anything. So this one very important thing, like we talk about manifestation, for example, Rahu Ketu play a huge role in manifestation, but the idea is not to cling to it. You sow a seed and you let it grow.
Yeah.
Now, I was talking to one of my students the other day, and I was telling them that where I live right now, my husband lives, he has been provided this accommodation, this area where I live in. 12 years ago, I was just a student in the city, and I had a new job, and my apartment was really small and it was really crowded. And I used to take the train from a station right next to this place. And I used to look at this place and I used to think, I would really like to live here. It's so green and so nice. And I went online and I looked for apartments, and then I saw that not everybody can get it. It's only for some government officials. And so I took that and I was like, someday. And then I left it. I don't know if I ever thought about it again, but I remember this, know that I have planted that seed somewhere. And today when I live here, I think just the universe has listened, right? There's a saying that you never know when Saraswati sits on your tongue. Saraswati is the goddess who writes everything, your destiny. She is the goddess of wisdom. So the idea of manifestation is whenever you're speaking, you speak positive things. You speak of possibilities. And you never know when Saraswati is sitting on your tongue, so she might hear any time and it might get fulfilled. And Rahu Ketu is like that. You have to be in that balance where you're chasing things, you're doing those things, but you're also okay if you don't achieve it. And if your Ketu is heavier, because everybody has a very simple experiment is, are you dog friendly or are you cat friendly? If you're a cat friendly person, your Rahu is stronger. If you're a dog friendly person, your Ketu is stronger. And if you like both, you can coexist with both. Both are in a balance. So if you're Ketu heavy, you will feel detached, strongly detached, but you still have to know that, this role of a mother, of a wife, or of a girlfriend, or as an employee, whatever you're doing, this is a part of your karma.
Yep.
Your life doesn't depend on it. Your soul journey doesn't depend on it. You're just doing it because it's a part of the environment. It's also a role to be fulfilled. Your soul has come here to experience this also. Your soul has come here to, let's say, experience marriage. It's not that it's your complete purpose, but yes, it has come here to experience it. So you stay here and you do your duty and you keep it spiritual. You have your own individuality and you don't try to define yourself by something. Like, for example, 10th house Ketu. You don't try to define yourself by your profession. It's one of your karma. One thing that is said is,
I've learned that one.
Yes. When you have mastered something in your past lives, Ketu appears in those areas.
Yep.
That is why your soul is disconnected, because your soul is, I've done this.
Yeah.
I've done this. I've been here. Why am I doing this again? It's just because it's life and you have to experience all flavors of it.
Yep. Yeah. And what's beautiful about astrology too is it allows people to take the self out of it a little bit, like you said, right? So it's not so much like about the self, it's about this universal experience that you got put here to experience and learn and grow through, which I think is the beauty of Rahu and Ketu. And I don't know, there's just so much depth versus a north-south node in Western astrology. When I was into that, I was like, that's not giving me the answers I need from this.
And I think what's beautiful about Rahu and Ketu is the connection with nature, connection with animals. People with strong Rahu Ketu energies connect with animals very strong. And one of the things we believe in is that as you reincarnate, you go through so many lifetimes. A dog today could be your child or your husband or your mother in your past life. When you think of things from that way, it gives you a different perspective. It connects you to everything.
Yeah, it allows you to have more compassion as well, too, for everything and everyone around. So what would you say for people out there who only know Western astrology and kind of want to get into the Vedic system? Any sort of quick tips or advice before we go today?
I mean, see, I always say that you must try.
Yeah.
Get a reading, see what resonates. I know some people, I've had some students who've told me that Western resonates more. There is 1 out of 100 people, but they say that. So if you have to try for yourself first. And one thing, definitely, as I said, astrology is just you decide that your life has a goal as a professional, in relationships, whatever, or a spiritual purpose, and you find a guru or you find a astrologer. And keep this in mind that different astrologers have different energy. Yeah. And because every chart shows us, my chart shows something else. Someone's chart shows something else. Someone's going to be really good in gemstones, and someone's going to be really good in guidance. So you have to, it's okay to shop around with it. But whoever you find to be resonating, whose guidance works, guidance. I think that's very important. Understand your flaws. I think good things we don't need to know. I think most of us, when we're going to readings, we're trying to find out the good thing, which is okay for motivation and confidence. But when good periods are running, when your combinations are good, you will automatically make good decisions. You will meet good people. Everything will fall in place automatically. Where the guidance comes in picture is when bad things are there or when they are approaching, and your guide can save you from that. Because that's the time where we say that my gut feeling is saying this and I think this is going to be right. But you know what? You're going to run a debilitated Mercury Dasha and your gut feeling is really going to get you into trouble. And so you have to find someone you can trust and understand all the phases so you can plan accordingly. And also, lastly, I think it's a lifestyle. It's not one of remedy. It's not one of thing. It's a lifestyle. That becomes very important. People who are practitioners dive into it like an ocean way. You swim in an ocean without thinking that you're going to just cross all the oceans. So same way with Vedic astrology, just very interested, get into it. So I think what I've seen is people who take like my basics course, just with basics, they are able to relate so much, but then they keep coming back to me and they're like, do you know this too? And how did you find this? And they want me to teach them advanced, but I'm like, see, everything is advanced. I can teach you something new every 1 month or 2 months because either I have learned or I have intuitively learned something new because astrology is endless.
Yeah.
So what can be done is you can be initiated into astrology and then you remain in, that's the parampara. Astrology in India, like I think Western culture has really made it into certifications or like this kind of. It doesn't happen like that. It happens as lineage.
Yep.
Your guru is your guru pita. He's your father of like guide. He's your counselor and you take them as father and you stay with them. It's a lineage.
Yep.
You stay in that. You stay connected with them. They learn, you learn. It's a constant thing. And when we pray, when we do our rituals, even before God, even before universe, we remember our guru. That's because the guidance flows through them. So we should never be afraid. And if we are thinking that we must know everything, then I think that's just the wrong place to begin with. Because look at this universe. How can we know everything?
No, it's an endless study for sure. It never ends. Right. It is a lifestyle. It's like you're going to start seeing everything from this different lens through astrology as well, too. So where can people find you for readings or your courses if they're interested in learning more about you as well?
So I have my website called Vedic Astro By Chitra.com. Currently, I have 2 Instagram pages. I'm transitioning because first page really started when I was still working in the corporate and I was using it as my diary. I used to write like whatever I felt like. So now I'm transitioning it to another page. So this is also known as Vedic Astro By Chitra. There are a lot of imposters as well. I want to make sure that people are aware of that. I would never ask you to pay offline. I would never I tell people that you go on a website or like you verify that it's me because I'm just not able to control how many accounts are there. But yeah, you can find me online. I provide readings. I teach once a year. My course is slightly changing this year. So this year I'm waiting another month or 2 before I launch. But yeah, I think everyone should try once, and especially, and if you are somebody who believes, for me, it's very important that young people, teenagers, their parents, maybe not themselves, because they are going and doing readings at 12, I think something's wrong, but their parents should be consulting for them. They should understand what their child is here for so that they can fulfill their potential.
Oh, that's a huge one. Yeah. The best thing is when you get parents who are like, oh, I want my kids to do this because I need to understand them better. It's like a very healing experience for them as well, too. I love that you said that. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciated this conversation. I know the audience learned so much as well. And I'll definitely be following you for more of I think you do some energy updates as well, too. Don't you like email updates?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have this program called Aligner. Every single day I send you an email. It's personally written email, but I just want to give people a taste of how energies work for them. And I align that with your chart. So that's more of the lifestyle thing that I'm talking about, because every day I tell you that today this energy is running. Today you could do this. You could donate today. You could do the small ritual. And so if you follow that, that will really give you a taste of Vedic lifestyle. Because what I have seen is like my mother, or there are these countless women in India, my grandmother, they're not astrologers, but they have been raised in this lifestyle. So they know that today is the second moon phase and today you should be cooking this and you should be not cooking this. And so that's a very interesting thing that we're doing with Alina. And yeah, that's, again, I love being directly connected to all the members because we constantly daily in touch.
So much fun. And I love all that. So thank you so much again for coming on. And it was such a great conversation. And I know everyone learned so much as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for having me here. I would definitely love to hear more of your podcast. Thank you so much for giving it a platform. As I said, Vedic Astrology, you're doing a huge service to the subject and body of this knowledge.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.